Hello, I'm Carissa Simons and welcome to Club News. Corporate social responsibility has become an increasingly important issue for organisations around the world, including the club industry. The community, government and other stakeholders increasingly want to be assured that the organisations they support are doing the right thing as corporate citizens. Joining me today to discuss how corporate social responsibility fits into the club industry and a new guide to help ensure that the industry is at the front of the pack when it comes to social responsibility and measuring it is Jackie Allender from the Australian Centre for Corporate Social Responsibility. Welcome, Jackie.
Hi, Carissa.
Now, firstly, why has corporate social responsibility become such a key thing for organisations?
Well, you're right. It's become increasingly important for organisations, and that's because they've realised that they don't operate in a vacuum. They need the support of their society, their communities, governments, in order to operate successfully. And so, as they've realised that, they've realised they need to build trust with their communities and with those other stakeholders. And that's why corporate social responsibility has come to the fore, because it's about helping organisations to build that trust by effectively understanding their stakeholders' needs and meeting those their needs.
So what do clubs need to know about CSR specifically? And can you tell us a bit about what can go wrong if an organisation doesn't have a CSR plan in place and it's not front of mind?
Well, plenty can go wrong. I think we've seen over the last little while, we've seen scandals with 7-Eleven underpaying workers. We've seen Volkswagen in the US having issues about falsifying records around emissions. And just recently we've seen CommBank in the news about issues related to its CommInsure insurance branch. So all those things go to the heart of an ethical culture in an organisation. So when you don't have a corporate social responsibility program in place or have a culture of social responsibility, things can go pretty pear-shaped pretty quickly. So your reputation suffers. But for clubs, they already do fantastic things in the community, and for them, corporate responsibility and meeting their social responsibilities is about bringing together a lot of the things that they already do and starting to think a little bit more strategically about that. So that they can meet community expectations across economic, environmental and social spheres. And those expectations are raising all the time.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's a new guide that's been developed that's specifically for clubs. Can you take us back to the beginning? How did it come about?
Well, Clubs New South Wales was really aware that for many clubs they were struggling a little bit with managing and understanding changing expectations in their communities. And they needed a little bit of help. So they approached us. We're a management consultancy, a specialist firm dealing in corporate social responsibility. They asked us for a little bit of help. We came up with the idea of a guide together with Clubs New South Wales, and then we worked with a lot of different clubs from very, very small clubs right through to some of the largest clubs to help develop the material in the guide. And that's been developed and then sent back for review to various clubs. And I have to say, the feedback has been pretty amazing.
So what key issues emerged as part of the process of developing the guide?
Look, it's very clear that for a lot of clubs, the big issues are around their governance, around regenerating their boards and connecting more effectively with their members. And CSR, a social responsibility program, can help them do just that. And for other clubs, the other big issue is around community expectations and understanding and meeting those community expectations. And so again, that's more about greater engagement with communities.
And I guess if that, in terms of attracting new board members and new people to the club, if you've to the club governance, if you've got that focus on corporate social responsibility, then that makes you more attractive to that new generation.
Oh, absolutely. If you're connecting with your community and your members, understanding what they are interested in and connecting with their values, a lot of younger people these days are really interested in the environment, in helping others, in deeper community engagement. And so if you're involved in that, that automatically helps to attract people to your club.
So what simple things can clubs do, clubs of all sizes do, to meet their social responsibilities?
Look, I think the big thing is to start thinking strategically about it all, to think a little bit more about how they engage with the community, a bit of deeper understanding about what community needs are, and to start thinking about little things that they can do. There's no one size fits all. It's all about finding what's right for you. Bigger clubs will have bigger resources, so they'll be able to do more. But there's always things that small clubs could do. You know, it might be as simple as, say, setting up a farmers market in your club grounds to help to bring in the local community and also help them to have access to better fresh quality fruit.
So can you give us some examples, I guess, of what some small, some medium, some large clubs have done in the area of corporate social responsibility?
Yeah, well, as I said, clubs are already doing some awesome things out there. I've seen examples, and we've got some really great examples in the guide. I've seen examples of clubs that have used corporate social responsibility programs to revitalise their board. I've seen small clubs that have run a breakfast program, for example, for their local primary school, and that's been an interesting result because it's had great success with the kids and their focus on schoolwork, but it's had the result for the club of bringing in new members and more patronage. And large clubs, I think we've heard a lot of the big environmental initiatives that some of the large clubs have done. So, you know, industrial scale composting with involving a number of different clubs. So there's all sorts of things happening already in the world of clubs at all sorts of scale.
So how can clubs get the most out of the guide?
Look, I'd really like clubs to use it, basically. You can dip in there and you can find tools and resources. It's not just some dry words. It's actually got a lot of tools, some resources, so you can go online to check out a few existing programs. It will help you, direct you to where you can get other help. It's designed to be used, and you can read it and then dip into it as you need as you're developing your program.
And I believe that you're also working with Clubs New South Wales on another related project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it's pretty exciting. Part of the social responsibility idea is helping you to better tell your story, and the way that you can better tell your story as a club is to report it. And so we're working with Clubs New South Wales to help them prepare their first ever sustainability report, which I hope and expect will be out sometime early next year.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing that when it's ready, and hopefully having you back on the program to talk about that sustainability report once we have it.
That would be great. I'm sure it's going to be very, very good indeed.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Jackie. I'll be back with more club news after the break. Welcome back to Club News. It's no secret that clubs are facing increasing competition for the consumer dollar, and many clubs will have to diversify their operation and be innovative and brave if they are to survive in the long run. With significant demographic changes forecast for the Australian population, some clubs are looking at the growing number of seniors as an opportunity to diversify. Joining me today to discuss these opportunities is Greg Russell from Russell Corporate Advisory. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Carissa.
So we know from ABS data that there's about to be, in fact, it's already begun, a huge demographic shift in Australia. But as well as challenges, what opportunities does that present for clubs?
Look, I think it's a magnificent opportunity for clubs. When you think about where clubs started, they, in a large way, created communities, and clubs really provided a basis for those communities to form back in the 60s and the 70s. The people that were there, to use a phrase, digging the well, are the people that we're going to serve now in the next, I guess, iteration of club life, where the services that we can provide as clubs will now, I think, shift very largely into this senior space, and it's really focused on the people that started the clubs. They're our market. They were our market in the beginning of our clubs' lives, and they are our market in this sort of shift in into a different form of income.
Well, as you kind of indicated there is a bit of a natural fit there between clubs and the growing sort of demographic in the seniors age group that is coming. How much activity do you see in that space for clubs, Greg?
It's surprising. I was actually adding up what we've actually have a current involvement with, and in the next 5 years there are, I think, is between 800 million and $1 billion worth of capital projects that clubs we have some involvement with will be committing to. So it's a huge amount of activity.
So what are clubs doing in this space to diversify, to address this demographic shift?
Well, they're looking at I guess, a range of opportunities in what you'd call the seniors market, and the seniors market is. There's a lot of language that's quite generic in that space, and it's only when you start to delve into it you realise the subtle differences. So, there's a very big difference between aged care and seniors living. Seniors living is really residential accommodation with a very low level of care, and aged care is a much higher level of care with a much lower level of capacity for the resident. So clubs are generally moving initially into that seniors living space, where it's almost a residential type development, but don't let me oversimplify it because it's far from simple. And they're also then looking at some ageing in place concept, where once you've been through your time in a seniors village, then you need a higher level of care, and having a place to go is, I think, a big part of the thinking that you have to do when you start into this market. Okay,
so take us through that thinking. What are some of the key issues that clubs need to consider before entering seniors living specifically, but any kind of, whether they're planning on just living at seniors living or looking at ageing in place or aged care?
Look, it really is understanding the market, understanding what their strategic requirements are. It's a very capital intensive investment. It's not something that you can go into as a solution for a performance problem in a club, because you will need to invest lots of money, unfortunately, in some perspectives, in getting good advice around a whole range of issues, understanding the market, and really understanding what your needs are as a club in terms of whether you need a capital gain, a quick capital gain, or whether you need a revenue stream or want a revenue stream for long-term sustainability. So having your strategy clearly laid out, I guess, is one of the critical things to think about.
Are there tax issues there to consider?
Very significant tax issues and surprising results in there, actually. It's one thing that you really need to have a good look at early. Tax planning early in a project can be very advantageous down the track, and there are things that have to be done in a sequence. Affairs organised in a process that will potentially give you some very significant advantages from a tax point of view. Real specialist area, and it's something that shouldn't definitely not be shortcut, and it should happen very early in the project.
So what can you do, or what can a club do to make sure that they get this process right, and particularly that they get cash flow right, considering it is such a capital intensive development?
It's really about engaging the right advice early. There is a very high level of specialised knowledge in this space, ranging from, well, the tax advice, and it's not just income tax, it's GST, implications for how you plan and account for that, understanding how the market's moving in that particular area, understanding how you might structure property titles, how you might create security interests to comply with seniors living legislation. I mean, we think clubland is complicated from a legislative point of view. Well, when you add seniors living into it, it's probably on a par with the level of regulation and intervention in some respects, particularly when you get into aged care. So planning early is very important.
Indeed. Look, I mentioned earlier, there is ABS data shows that there's going to be a huge demographic shift in the Australian population. The seniors market will grow. But does that mean demand is guaranteed?
Look, there will definitely be old people. There's no doubt about that. I think the number is about, by 2032, 6.5 million people aged over 65. So there are people there that will require these services. The demand will be created, I believe, by offering the right product at the right time. You can never say demand is guaranteed, but I think if the right product is offered in the right circumstances, then there is an extremely large market there that's waiting to be served in the next 10 or 20 years.
What other market considerations